Hello everyone, my name is Victor. I am the Occult Technician. Thank you for joining me. If any of you have been watching my streams or following my art on Instagram, you know that I am a demonologist. I work with demonology. Every month on the full moon, I pull a card from the Goetia Tarot card deck. This month I pulled the card of Lucifer. You can see it here. I made a promise to him that I would start going live, and that is what I'm doing here. So, in my recent videos, I started a series titled Mind War, where we are working from a book by the same title. This book is titled Mind War by Dr. Michael Aguino. If any of you are rejoining from TikTok, I did get through the first couple of pages, but we're kind of starting over here. I wanted to make sure Instagram was on as well. I didn't want all my friends over on Instagram to miss out. So bear with me as we backtrack a little bit here. But Chapter 1, Mind War. Psychohistory. That branch of mathematics which deals with the reactions of human conglomerates to fixed social and economic stimuli. Implicit in this definition is the assumption that the human conglomerate being dealt with is sufficiently large for valid statistical treatment. A further necessary assumption is that the human conglomerate be itself unaware of psychohistorical analysis in order that its reactions be truly random. Isaac Asimov, Foundation in 1951. I think what he's trying to say there is basically, as a group of people, we remember our history, we remember patterns, and sometimes our historical memory as a group is going to guide us forward. Everything's not just, we're not necessarily just living in the moment. Sometimes we are also living in the past. Sorry, I'm just looking to see if I can see my live on Instagram right now. Still getting used to this, working through the laptop. So thank you for being patient, folks. Don't see it. If anybody knows if there's a way to watch your own live on Instagram on a PC, let me know. Anyways, okay. So back to Mind War. Aristos, the best for a given situation. John Fowles, The Aristos, 1964. The term Aristos is what we're going to be focused on when we talk about Mind War on not only a global scale, but when we think of Mind War on a personal scale. As I said in my earlier videos that I posted earlier this weekend, we're going to adapt the tactics found in Mind War, and we're going to try to apply that to our own lives. So Aristos, the best for a given situation. Our goal is to figure out the very best for the situation that we're in. Antecedent, Mind War, 1980. In the later 1970s, psychological operations, PSYOP, doctrine in the U.S. Army had yet to emerge from the disappointment and frustration of the Vietnam War. Thus, it was that in 1980, Colonel Paul Valley, commander of the 7th PSYOP Group, asked Major Michael Aguino, as his headquarters PSYOP research and analysis team leader, to draft a paper that would encourage some future thought within the PSYOP community. He did not want a Vietnam post-mortem, but rather some fresh and innovative ideas concerning PSYOP's evolution and application. Okay, so again, the author of this book is Dr. Michael Aguino. He is from the U.S. Army Psychological Operations Division. And he is also the founder of the Satanic Church, along with Anton LaVey. And he is the founder of the Temple of Set. So I think that's kind of interesting that he was also a psychological operations officer. And so again, his boss basically said, hey, what is the future of PSYOPs? And as we see the explosion of Satanism, things like demonolatry, since the 1980s, it would be my guess is that he had something to do with that. And in some ways I would have to thank him because I practice it and it has truly transformed my life. And if it's something that you practice, I hope it's helping you also. I prepared an initial draft, which Valley reviewed and annotated, which proceeded to revised drafts and critiques until he was satisfied. And the result of that was the concept paper, From PSYOP to Mind War, The Psychology of Victory. Valley sent copies of it to various governmental offices, agencies, commands, and publications involved or interested in PSYOP. He intended it not as an article for publication, but simply as a talking paper to stimulate dialogue. In this, it was quite successful, judging by the extensive and lively letters he received concerning it over the next several months. Within the U.S. military, PSYOP had habitually been relegated to a back seat as a force multiplier. The principal strategic decisions are made in consideration of traditional political and military interests and goals. Only then is PSYOP invited to the table to help achieve already agreed upon missions more efficiently. So again, I think the author's, what he's saying there is, when it comes to international issues, global scale issues, we often have political and military interests are met first, and then the PSYOP comes in. But Dr. Aguino wants to turn that on its head, where you bring the PSYOP in first, and here's why. Valley's and my original concept of mind war reverses this sequence. Psychological means for achieving victory, essentially through convincing the enemy that he really wants to bring his policies and goals into harmony with ours, are first fashioned in support of basic political realities. Okay, so basically what he's saying there is the reality of the situation that you're in, right? And again, we're talking about this on a personal level. He's writing this on a global scale level. Hello, my friend. He's trying to talk about this on a global scale, but we're talking about it on our personal level. So the first thing that we have to do is be truthful with the realities that we live in, right? No matter what kind of issues that you're dealing with, you have to take a kind of truthful look at that and understand that we, in order to, achieve the Aristos, which we talked about on the first page here, the best for a given situation, in order to achieve that, the first thing you have to do is understand the realities and maybe some of the limitations that you're going to have, right? Let's see. The use of ordinary military force, bombs, bullets, etc., is regarded as a last resort in circumstances wherein mind war by itself fails. So again, just like in our personal lives, force is always the last resort. The immediate advantage of that 1980 concept of mind war is that it conducts wars in non-lethal, non-injurious, and non-destructive ways. Essentially, you overwhelm your enemy with argument. You seize control of all of the means by which his government and populace process information to make up their minds, and you adjust it so that those minds are made up as you desire. Everyone is happy, no one gets hurt or killed, and nothing is destroyed. Ooh, that's interesting. You overwhelm your enemy with argument. We are, trying not to argue. That's when we look at this on a personal level, right? We're trying not to argue with the people closest to us. That's part of the, personal mind war that we want to win. So, hold on, TikTok. Don't forget to turn off all your reminders, folks. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So my TikTok alert just went off telling me that I have spent too much time on TikTok, so this is a quick reminder. In order to win the mind war, you have to not be hypnotized by the screen, staring at it all day, all the time. Make sure you set your 10-minute reminders and 1-hour limits. Just put the code in if you want to keep going. I get it. But it's just one of those tools that's going to help you stay focused in the reality that we're trying to gain control of here. So again, you're going to overwhelm your enemy with argument. You seize control of all the means by which his government and populace process information to make up their minds. So that would be, again, on a global scale, that's your propaganda. You're going to take over the news. You're going to take over the radio, the television, streaming services, things like that. So only your message gets out. We can apply that to our own lives by propagandizing yourself. Okay? If you are on the social media apps, which you're watching me on right now, make sure that you are choosing things and you are liking things that make you feel good, that are going to motivate you. So when you do spend your time on there, it's not things that are going to tear you down. I often see, every maybe 100th video is something violent and out of nowhere, completely out of character with the other videos that I'm watching. When those come up, I make sure that I go in and thumbs down them and go into the settings and say, I don't want to see this anymore, right? Again, that's part of fighting your mind war. You got to police what goes into your mind. You need to seize control of the means by which information goes into your mind. You still have control of it. So with the forces that you might be up against, you also need to adjust it so that those minds are made up as you desire. So now again, when you're working with other people in your life, we're going to try to make sure that they make up their minds. We let them make up their minds. They think they made up their mind, but ultimately it was us that made up their mind for them. But in their mind, they get to take the credit for it. Who cares? Great, right? It's maybe just called suggestion. You quietly, gently suggest things to people, and all of a sudden one day it clicks in their mind, and you go, good job, great. Now, do you get the credit for it? No, but who cares? Because ultimately, what you wanted to get done gets done. And that's how you win the mind war. Ordinary warfare, on the other hand, is characterized by its rejection of reason. The antagonists just maim or kill each other's people and steal or destroy each other's land until one side is hurt so badly that it gives up, or both sides are hurt so badly that they agree to stop short of victory. After such a war, there is lasting misery, hate, and suffering. All right. Those are the things we're trying to avoid here, folks. The only losers in mind war are the war profiteers, governments, corporations, and entrepreneurs, which grow fat on orders for helicopters, tanks, guns, munitions, etc. Consequently, what President Dwight Eisenhower referred to as the military-industrial complex can be counted upon to resist implementation of mind war as the governing strategic conflict doctrine. All right. So again, like I said in the last stream, those guys who make money off of those things, they can still make a ton of money. They can still be profiteers. They can do it through healing. Stop making weapons of war. Start making weapons of healing. Let's help people. Let's stop destroying things. Let's stop killing each other. It's ridiculous, right? It's the same thing in your own life. Stop feeding the profiteers the money for the things that kill you. Drugs, alcohol, right? Fast food, things that make you sick. Stop feeding those war profiteers also, because they are at war with you constantly. If you're being fed poison or drinking poison after it's been advertised to you night after night, day after day by our largest institutions, okay? It's part of mind war, folks. It's all a part of it. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Again, this is part of a speech by President Dwight Eisenhower, his farewell address in January 17, 1961. Over 60 years ago, folks. I'm guessing it has gotten much larger since then. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense, which are peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together. As subsequent history evidences, Ike's warning was not heeded or simply came too late. Indeed, the principal, if not exclusive driving force for modern industrialized nations' wars today is economic advantage and profit, with social political themes such as freedom, democracy, and national security merely providing a propaganda veneer to distract and inflame the public. Yikes. Everybody understand what he was saying there? Much of our modern industry, when it comes to wars, they are fed through the social political themes, aka propaganda, right? Of freedom, democracy, national security, to inflame the public, to get us riled up. Okay? Let's not get riled up, folks. Let's take it easy, huh? There's already enough pain, already enough suffering. We deal with it in our own lives. The author here is talking about it on a global scale, but again, we are adapting the tactics of mind war to our own lives. And one way to do that is to not allow yourself to be inflamed by the propaganda veneer that the author just spoke of. John F. Kennedy's fate after officially deciding to end U.S. military involvement in Vietnam has not been lost on his successors in the White House. That's the 1980 Mind War Prospectus in its most simplified form. While in the subsequent decade there was no reason to anticipate that this paper would have any official effect upon U.S. PSYOP doctrine within or beyond the Army, several of its prescriptions were applied during the first Gulf War, and recently even more conspicuously during the 2003 invasion of Iraq. In both instances, intense PSYOP was directed against the object of the attack, while a simultaneous public affairs effort was made to shield U.S. domestic public opinion from the type of independent, critical media coverage that plagued the Vietnam War, by embedding journalists with military units to inevitably channel their perspectives and perceptions. Basically, the author is saying that during the Vietnam War, the journalists that were covering that war had a little too much freedom. And the messages that were getting back to the citizens were not necessarily conducive with what the military-industrial complex wanted them to hear. So be it. It's fine. That's what this PSYOP is about with its public affairs shield, right? The impact of even these minor techniques of mind war was remarkable. A psychological climate of inexorable U.S. victory was created and sustained in both the United States and Iraq, which accelerated that outcome on the ground. All right? So basically, we went in there, we said, hey, we've already won this. There's no reason to fight. And it worked. Somewhat less positively, the failure of mind war in this instance to be guided by only the most rigorous principles of truth and ethics has just as inexorably led to a substantial post-invasion evaporation of that euphoric climate. Basically, we went in there, said, hey, we're going to win, everything's going to be awesome. And then when things started to slide downhill, people stopped believing the advertisements. Therein lies the Achilles heel of mind war, invoking as it does the most intense emotions and commitments of its audiences. It must deliver the goods as they are judged by the target audiences. If the ethical values of those audiences are not respected, if mind war is used only in the service of ulterior motives and objectives, the resulting disintoxication can be socially shattering. So how do we bring this to a personal level? Because again, that's the goal of reading this book. It was written on a global scale, but we are taking the tactics of mind war and using them in our own lives. If we are going to propagandize those people in our lives that are giving us trouble, that are bugging the shit out of us, right? Oh, can we swear on these lives? Oh, well. All right. You kind of hit them with a love bomb. You hit them with a new strategy in your life. You may introduce new things into your life that are going to make your life better. Maybe you cut down on the drinking. Maybe you cut down on the fast food. Maybe you exercise a little more. Maybe you're starting to clean up your your room, clean up your house, right? Maybe things are starting to go a little bit better. People in your life are going to see that, and sometimes they're going to be upset. They're not going to like it. They like to maintain that status quo. They like seeing you down. They like seeing you when you're tired and exhausted and you can't fight back, right? So it's, imperative that once you do decide to make a change, maybe before you propagandize that change, maybe before you promote that change to those around you, start to implement some of it in your own life. Don't tell people that you're going to start drinking less if you and your buddies, if it's always about drinking when you're hanging out with them. Maybe just secretly do it, right? Start cleaning up around your area of the house a little bit. Try not to shake up the whole world, Maybe you start to make some healthy changes in your life. Maybe you don't have to propagandize it. You don't have to promote it at first. You want to prove it to yourself that you can continue on with these better habits, right? These New Year's resolutions, if you will, no matter what time of the year you decide to start them. And once you start to implement them and start to feel the positive effects of them and things start to, the train gets rolling, maybe then you hit those in your life with, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is what's happening. Now we start advertising, now we start promoting it, those changes. Because we want to be very careful that if you start to slip up and things go back a little bit, maybe, you slip up here and there, you don't want those people in your life to be able to use that against you, right? You don't want them to be, if the ethical values of those audiences are not respected, again, make sure if you are making changes in your life, let's say you live in a religious household and you're not really a fan of that religion, and you want to make some spiritual changes in your life. Oh boy. I hope you are ready for what's going to come of that. Again, as I talked about in the beginning of this stream, I am a demonologist. I practice demonolatry. I'm on this live stream here today because of the tarot card that I pulled earlier this month in the last full moon. And that tarot card was Lucifer. I made a promise to him that I would start doing live streams. I'm upholding my bargain, folks. Here I am. Okay? You start doing things like that, and you are in a very religious household, that's not going to be met with the, with a bunch of applause. So be cautious with that. I was very excited when I started my journey here with art and spirituality. And from a personal life lesson, I promoted it a little too quickly with my family and friends before I even understood what I was doing. And that led to a lot of confusion. A lot of confusion that the people in my life really didn't need to be put through, right? So again, if you're going to make these changes in your life, let them sink in a little bit. Maybe let people start to inquire about the things that they see in your life that have changed. You know what I'm saying? Right? Hey, you're looking good. What's going on? What did you do? What's changed? What's happening? Right? Isn't that kind of like the vampire thing? Let them inquire. And then give it to them. Because we don't want to shatter them socially. In addition to requiring an absolute ethical anchor The advanced mind war described in this book necessarily extends significantly beyond the time and space boundaries of the immediate battlefield. In this, it differs markedly from Valley's and my initial concept, which was simply to reverse its battlefield subordination to physical war combat. Mind war defined. Definition. Mind war is the psychological and psychophysiological conditioning of all participants in a social political problem, first to cooperatively stabilize it without recourse to the violence, then to eliminate its basis by the creation of a moral community to supersede it. Okay? He's basically saying, you have a place with a problem, you have some people with a problem, you're going to go in there, we're going to cooperatively stabilize it without violence, right? Through psychology and psychophysiology, which we're all going to get into throughout this book. And we're going to eliminate the need for any type of violence or force. Again, whether it's a global scale or a personal scale in your personal life. We do not resort to force. It's always the last resort. But once the problem has been solved, it has to be replaced with something that was better than it. Okay? Again, if any of you have been following along through my story over these last 2 years, that's what's happened. Instead of the bad place, the sad place, the unhealthy habits that I was in, right? I didn't just give everything up and then just live a mindless life of staring at the wall. I moved away from those unhealthy habits, like drinking too much, staring at the television, video games, not exercising, eating bad, all things that were just depressing and sad. But I had to replace them with something, and as, again, if you're following along, if you haven't been, check out my YouTube channel, The Occult Technician, find the playlist My Magical Year. Start with the introduction video, and I explain it all there, folks. Right? Talk about what I went through, some of the things I've experienced through the use of magic, through the use of meditation tapes called the Gateway Experience, through the use of Super Mario's favorite food, right? And when you combine those things with spirituality, such as demonolatry, it has been very healing for me. And it has helped me replace some of those other bad habits. Right? Back to the mind war. Examining the elements of this definition, the base term is a composite of the principle of mind, which is the collection and correlation of sensory input, both actively and passively processed by self-conscious being in order to draw conclusions, make decisions, and take actions accordingly. All right? So, through the things that we input, through our senses, right, we actively process those. That's like when you're driving a car, you're drawing a picture, something like that. You're actively thinking about what you're doing. Petting your dog, you're actively thinking about how soft and fluffy they are and how much you love them, right? You can be passively processing things. That may simply be you're out doing a chore, you're out cutting your grass or something like that. You're breathing in the fresh air, you're feeling the warmth of the sun. You might not be thinking about it, but those are passively happening. You're out getting the exercise of cutting the grass. You may not actively be thinking about how good that is, but your mind and your body are. They're recognizing that. That is the principle of the mind. And that's what helps us make decisions and take actions, right? So if we feel good after cutting the grass or doing chores or exercising or whatever it is, and we now actively think about that, then we're going to take actions and do it again because it made us feel great instead of making us feel sad and depressed and lonely because we drank a bunch of poison, ate a bunch of poison, watched a bunch of poison, and poisoned ourselves. Don't do it, folks. Don't do it. The principle of war, which is the extreme expression of intolerance of a current disagreement between at least two social groups when ordinary attempts to resolve it by discussion and diplomacy fail. Okay? We know what war is. We see it. It's going on today. It's been going on for countless centuries. Hopefully, we are quickly coming up to a 1,000-year reign of peace. I don't know. That's what everybody says, whether it's religious or technocratic. Hopefully a millennia of peace will be upon us soon. The age of Aquarius, we're moving into it, folks. This is the transition into it. Enjoy this transitionary time. It's amazing. Don't be fearful. I'm part of Generation X. You know, one of those people that went from dial-up internet to what you're seeing today. A lot of things have changed in my life, in my lifetime. Enjoy the transition. It's huge. The important thing is in order to get to whatever is coming next, we have to still win one last battle, right? And that's the mind war. That's what we're fighting here, the mind war. If we can win the mind war, then maybe we will successfully get that 1,000 years of peace without any more physical war. And again, you war profiteers out there who are listening, understand there's still ways to make money. I'm not against you making money. I'm all for it. So don't come after me, all right? I'm just saying, again, we adapt those tactics from the mind war, put them in our personal lives, right? Psychology is the study of mind processes and the resultant expression. I don't know much about psychology, never studied it in any type of academic way, except on my own. If you haven't, I suggest pick up as much as you can. It's the beauty of mind war. You have to, the things that you study and prepare yourself for mind war, it's only going to help you. Right? When you start to learn the tactics of your enemy, things like lies and hypocrisy and gaslighting. I talked to somebody the other day who never understood what the term gaslighting was, and I gave a simple example of it, and a light bulb went off above their head. And they were like, wow, that's what that's called. And all of a sudden it was just like over their face I could see all the times in their lives where the people that loved them gaslit them, and how confusing and sad and frustrating it felt. I could see it all on their face, and they were like, wow, that is what gaslighting is. Okay? That's why we learn psychology. We need to learn those tools, those manipulative tools that people may be using against us in our own lives. Right? Because again, we're taking the tactics of mind war from a global scale, and we're implementing them in our own lives, in our personal lives. Okay? Psychophysiology is the branch of psychology that is concerned with the physiological bases of psychological processes. Conditioning refers to both liminal and subliminal operations of mind modification to produce a desired state of mind, perception, interpretation, and behavior. This problem-tailored mixture of psychological and psychophysiological conditioning is the province of Mind War branch and is detailed in Chapter 3. Okay? So liminal and subliminal. We often hear about subliminal messages, right? Subliminal marketing. Subliminal stuff in music, movies, all that, right? Like I talked about before, when you're on your social media, make sure you are giving the thumbs up to those videos that make you feel good, that give and bring you positive messages. And when you see those videos that make you feel uncomfortable, go into the settings and let Instagram and TikTok know that you don't want to see them anymore. Every 100 videos or so, all of a sudden, out of my nice peaceful thread will be a very violent video where the violence happens quickly. I don't like it. Okay? That is a liminal way to subliminally make you feel like crap, and it's not cool. So make sure you tell them no and that you don't like those things anymore. Do it in your settings, right? Don't forget to set your timers and your reminders to take a break. If you want to continue staring at the screen for 5 hours, just punch in the buttons. It's just another tool for the mind war. Because that is going to condition your mind. As we're seeing positive and good things in our feeds, it's going to condition us to be proactive. It's going to condition us to be motivated to make those changes in our lives. A social political problem is a disagreement between two social and political groups of people. Nation states and or sub or supranational cultural, religious, ideological, and or ethnic groups. Jiminy. Wow. War results when the problem is sufficiently persistent and intolerable that it cannot be further endured by the participants. Okay? So again, mind war on a global scale is dealing with a disagreement between two social or political groups, right? So it's sadly about to be political season again. By that I mean 1 year out of every 4 years has to be dominated by politics if it's not already in your life. Right? So we see those things. We see the social issues that we have to deal with. And how convenient is it that for every social and political issue, there are only two sides? Isn't that nice? Isn't that an easy way to condition our minds? Right? These are the tools of mind war, folks. Not just the personal mind war. You have to understand the tools that are being used against you in order to take a stand. Take a stand in your personal mind, right? Not allow yourself to be propagandized. Not allow yourself to be, from, I think it was on the last page, maybe, inflamed. Right? They know what they're doing. Recognize it. And stop the inflammation. Okay. So social and political groups, right? So that's us. That's the people, the citizens. Then there are nation states, right? So sometimes that's one country going after another, and although we make up the citizenry of that country, sometimes it's not up to us whether two nation states go to war, go to battle, cause trouble for each other. I think most of us don't want that to happen. We're tired of it. We can resolve these issues without physical war. Then there's cultural, religious, and ideological issues, right? Okay, so culture, religion, and ideology are all the stories that make us who we are. the stories that we tell each other and ourselves that make us who we are as a group, as a conglomerate of people, as we talked about earlier, right? So probably the most easily changed of the social, political, or nation-state groups is actually the cultural, religious, and ideological. Those can be changed. Again, like I said before, if you find yourself in a very religious household and you are uncomfortable and you go to make that change away from the religion into something new, understand it's going to be difficult. There's going to be inflammation, right? People are going to get upset with you. We understand that. But that is probably going to be the easiest for you to change. It's going to be easier than you changing your nation state, as in moving to another country. Most people can't do that, right? And it's going to be much easier than changing the last category, which is your ethnic group, right? We are who we are. We were all born this way, right? There's only so much we can do to change it. And war results when the problem is sufficiently persistent and intolerable that it cannot be further endured by the participants. So when we find ourselves in situations that are just no longer tolerant, that we just can't tolerate these things anymore, then yeah, you have to prepare and fight the mind war on your personal level. And that's something that you have to decide. What are you willing to tolerate in your own life? Stabilization refers to the identification and achievement of the best possible resolution of the problem to temporarily remove the danger of physical war, what we like to call around here the aristos. Remember, we are always trying to achieve the aristos, and that is the best possible outcome for our current situation. Right? I think all of us listening today are limited in one way or another, probably financially. I'm guessing that's something we can all agree on. Now, all of us would probably love to be in giant mansions with fast cars and all kinds of wildness, right? That's great. Hey, sure. But that's not the reality, right? When we look for the aristos, it is what is the best thing for our current situation, right? Let's not think about changing too much, getting too radical in our changes and thoughts. Maybe that can come over time. But for now, we need to take a very close reality check. What is our current situation? What are the boundaries and limitations of that situation? How can we make it the very best? And once we've reached that level, then we extend the battlefield, right? Once we get into the very best possible situation in our personal life, in the small area that we can control, then we move outwards. Non-recourse to violence precludes not just physical war, but any and all physically harmful measures directed against human beings, whether or not they are problem participants. Such prohibited measures include, but are not limited to, bodily damage, injury, torture, or murder, exile, imprisonment, and or destruction of means of livelihood. Okay? On a personal level, in our personal lives, like we've said before, force is the last resort. That's on a global scale too. That's the way we need to look at it. Okay? Creation of a moral community refers to the process of parapolitics, resulting not in a structure of exploitation, intimidation, or desperation, but rather in a polis based upon enlightened morality, Kalogathia. Parapolitics and Kalokagathia are the province of parapolitics branch and are detailed in chapter 5. Okay. Again, something has to replace the situation that you just left, right? When you make a change in your life, you're not just going to give up everything. It is more of a replacement strategy. Okay? You can't just stop eating fast food and say, I'm never going to eat food again. No, you have to replace it with something healthy, right? There has to be a replacement. Just because you may have been born into a very religious household, and you are no longer comfortable with that religion, sometimes walking away from it, you have to replace it with something else, but you get that choice, right? You have the choice now. And again, like I said before, if that is a choice that you are making, if that's something that you're doing, be cautious before you promote those changes to those in your lives, especially if they are very fundamentalist in their thought process, whatever that may be, religion, politics, just whatever, you know what I'm talking about. Be cautious with it. Wait until you've made some of the changes, you've experienced the changes in your life, and you see that they're positive. You see that they're going to stick around a little while. You start to feel the success of those changes in your life. And then when someone sees the results of those changes, when someone sees the results of the hard work and starts to ask about it, that's when you begin your campaign of advertising, right? Again, you don't want to go in and advertise this product of, oh, look at all the wonderful changes I've made in my life. I'm going to be this great person. I'm going to be this. I'm going to be that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then you fall on your face a few times. They're going to use it against you, folks. Don't give them the fuel. Make the changes first. Make them incrementally. Commit to them. Be motivated. Right? And then, once they start to see the changes, then you can hit them with it. Right? Then you can say, here's what I'm doing. This is what's happening. Whether you like it or not. So what is mind war? Mind war controls human external action thoughts by identifying and adjusting the sensory impressions that the mind uses to assemble, modify, and reinforce them. Humans' sensory-based thoughts form the basis for the constructed outward personalities, and in groups, there are mores, biases, beliefs, traditions, habits, and taboos. Thus, through the gradual process, mind war controls groups of humans. Interesting. Okay, that's a big one. Because again, the mind war tactics that are for global scale, we're going to look at them in our personal lives. What is part of our current social, cultural structure, which is not good for us? Alcohol, right? They advertise it to us all the time. It's a part of every celebration, right? It's a part of every sporting event, every movie, music, whatever. It's always out there. It's part of our traditions. It's part of our bad habits and part of our taboos. Right? What's the taboo part of alcohol? The taboo part of all alcohol is talking about the bad parts of it. That goes against our cultural thoughts, right? We're only supposed to see the glamour of drinking. We're not supposed to be reminded of the sickness and the pain that it brings. And trust me, folks, I am dealing with the pain of alcoholism. It's been several years for me now. It's already done its damage. But we're moving on. We're healing from that, right? As the size of the group increases, common features of impressions, attitudes, and expressions emerge and can be identified and analyzed statistically, making possible social forecasting and the control of the future by aggregate, not individual manipulation. This is the basis of Isaac Asimov's science-fictional psychohistory, and of less ambitious but demonstrably practical political science forecasting. Such techniques and procedures can be applied regardless of how such groups are styled or named: cultures, tribes, societies, and nations. Right? So as the group gets larger, it's easier to gain more information, gain more statistical data, understand more about how, as a group, that culture is moving forward, right? What the changes, how you're going to implement the changes are going to be based on the amount of people that you have to deal with. Again, whether a global scale or on your personal life. Do you come from a small household? Are you there living with maybe one or two other people? The tactics that you apply to them on that much smaller scale would be much different than someone who lives in a large family, lives in a household with 10 people, right? If you're trying to implement changes in your workplace, do you work in a small company or do you work for a large corporation? The tactics that you take from Mind War in order to win those battles, win the war on your battlefield, right? It's going to be based upon the amount of people that you have to work with, that you have to deal with. All right? So folks, I think that's where we're going to end it for tonight. I appreciate you being here for the beginning of Mind War. Find me on Instagram. Check me out on YouTube. The playlist is titled My Magical Year. That'll give you some idea about what I've done and gone through over the last 2 years. My use of the meditation tapes called the Gateway Experience, along with Super Mario's Favorite Food. It's been very healing. It's helped guide me to where I am today. I've taken those healing forces, combined them with the spiritual practices of demonolatry, which you see here in front of me. Again, I started out this live broadcast tonight giving thanks to the spirit that I'm working with this month. Every month on the new moon, I pull a card from the Goetia Tarot card deck. This month, I pulled the card of Lucifer. I made a promise to him that I would go live. This is my first time live on TikTok. I've gone live on Instagram in the past for some of my woodworking that I've done. So check me out on Instagram if you want to see things like how I made this behind me, how I made much of the other art. Check out my link tree. That can get you to my Etsy store where you can get awesome t-shirts like this, stickers, get some hoodies, folks. I think I'm gonna start a sale here soon for hoodies and beanies and probably these long sleeve shirts because it was cold in my neck of the woods yesterday. I hate to say that. I don't want to see summer go. But we are just a few days from September. I don't have to work on September 1st, but I do hear it's a day of protest where we're supposed to take the day off and not spend any money. All right. I don't know whether you want to participate in that. I always enjoy a day off, and I believe it's a Friday. So maybe this is a fun idea from Victor, the occult technician, telling you maybe take Friday off. Enjoy yourself. Dig into Mind War. You can find it on Amazon by Dr. Michael Aguino. All right. Take care of yourself, folks. Take care of each other. If you have any questions, hit me up on Instagram. Again, check out my YouTube, My Magical Year. Give you a better understanding of how I got to where I am today.